Ada for telling my autistic brother the truth when he asked me why women don't like him. My younger brother, who is 24 years old, has Asperger's syndrome and is quite well-functioning, although with some oddities. As part of my stay-at-home instructions to care for my aging parents, I just returned to my hometown. My brother is still a resident of their home. I learned that he has been attempting to date in recent months, and that he has admitted that his attempts have been mostly fruitless. He even had the opportunity to go on a first date, but his date simply stood up and departed after approximately a half hour of conversation. I'm quite aware of the reason behind this, and it's not flattering. For starters, my parents have coddled him since he was a child, since he was on the autism spectrum and the only guy in our family at the time. My mother in particular used to tell him that he was wiser and more advanced than everyone else who was neurotypical at the time. This has contributed to his current assumption that he is fundamentally wiser than everyone else, particularly women, whom he believes are innately dumb and illogical. As a result, I am aware of how he interacts with women, such as me and his sisters. He has a tendency to say really harsh things first, and when we get angry, he will say things like, "You are being irrational/hysterical/illogical, I'm just being honest and you can't accept it," or "You are being irrational/hysterical/illogical, I'm just being honest and you can't accept it." This has become somewhat of a catchphrase for him through the years, and it drives us completely crazy. So when he inquired, I simply said, "Listen, the fact is that your manner of speaking to women may come off as quite insulting and borderline." I told him that he behaves as if he can read every woman precisely when, in fact, he is almost always incorrect. This triggered a negative reaction in him, and he subsequently claimed to my parents that I had assaulted him because of circumstances beyond his control. Now that I'm in hot water for undermining his confidence, I'm feeling both awful and relieved at the same time, which is a strange combination. This was the first time in my life that I expressed my displeasure with his actions, since our mother had always placed the blame on us whenever Dad became agitated as children. However, maybe I was too harsh. Ada for informing him of what I had said. Story 2. Ada for refusing to invite my racist in-laws, though they apologized. When my husband and I were first married a decade ago, we didn't have much money and couldn't afford to buy many things. My husband was devastated by everything since, unlike me, he hails from a wealthy family. Nevertheless, because his family was opposed to our marriage, I am Asian, he is white, they entirely walled him off from the rest of the world. For the record, I had not anticipated receiving financial aid from them, but it was upsetting that they assumed I was with my husband just for financial reasons, since I'm Asian. We haven't had any touch with his side of the family since then, which is understandable. We've chosen to do a vow renewal ceremony in style to commemorate our 10th wedding anniversary, since we can now afford to indulge a bit on our wedding anniversary. A trip overseas to relax, have fun, and just enjoy a holiday with our closest friends and family was agreed upon because of how difficult the previous 2 years had been for all of us psychologically and emotionally. And since my parents would be unable to afford to go otherwise, we have given them the whole vacation as a way of saying thank you for all they have done to help us out. I don't know how his family came to the conclusion that not only am I not a money digger, but that my husband and I are doing very well for ourselves and that we are about to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary. It was with an apology and an offer of a garish monster of a ring that they came out to us and offered to use it for our vow renewal ceremony. I'm not interested in their feigned non-apology, and I definitely have no intention of donning something that is completely inappropriate for me simply to keep the peace in the family. In addition, my engagement ring was a gift from my mother. It was my grandmother's engagement ring, which my mother also wore, so it has a great deal of emotional significance. As soon as he discovered that his grandma was dying and that she desired to make amends with him, my husband threw his support behind me wholeheartedly. Despite my reluctance to accept the visit, I made certain that we came to an agreement on a few points beforehand, including the fact that his family would not be invited to our vow renewal and that I will not be wearing their ring. She died away before we were able to pay her a visit, and his family has been hounding and guilt-tripping both of us ever since, attempting to persuade us to include them in our wedding reception. My spouse, on the other hand, is on the fence. He kept repeating that they had apologized, which they hadn't really done, and that we could help them learn more. As soon as he wouldn't let it go, I essentially informed him that since he isn't Asian, he has no right to receive an apology or offer forgiveness for racism performed against an Asian, and that it isn't my obligation to teach racists about why racism is bad. And let's be honest, my parents shouldn't have to deal with bigots while on what should be a relaxing vacation. He said that he understood and apologized to me, but he has remained aloof since then. I really don't want to go forward with our vacation when things are still so tense between us, but everyone has already committed financially, and we can't afford to repay them all at the same time, and I'm starting to worry if I'm being a jerk for not putting out more effort with his family. Update. In response to your advice, I informed my husband that our vow renewal was not the appropriate venue for us and his family to gather, given that this was to be a celebration of the last 10 years of our marriage, something his family had no role in and was violently opposed to. In the event that they chose to apologize and begin again, we might meet for lunch or coffee following our trip. Afterwards, he admitted to what some of you had suspected, that his family was aware of the vow renewal since he maintained infrequent touch with his sister, and he had instructed her to inform his other siblings in the hopes that we might mend things. He hoped that after 10 years, they would see that they were mistaken about me and that they were wrong to cut him off. It was for this reason that he continued urging me to forgive them despite the fact that they had made no public apology or shown any sign of change. He thought that if we all got together, things would sort themselves out and he would be accepted back into the fold. He'd become reclusive because of his feelings of guilt about what he'd done behind my back, as well as his anguish over what had transpired. I was enraged and upset that he had deceived me for a decade and had lied to me about it. I understood his need to hold on to the notion that his racist family might one day see the light, but I couldn't understand why he never once asked his sister for an apology or even whether she was sorry for the horrible things she'd said to me. It was a lie by omission, but it was still a lie. I wanted some space, so I returned to my childhood home with my folks. In the time that I was away, his parents and sister paid him a surprise visit. Unfortunately, the reunion did not go as well as he had planned. They were fully unrepentant, and their renewed racial invective directed at me was much more venomous than before. He also discovered why they were so keen about attending our vow renewal even though they were still plainly opposed to our marriage. Contrary to popular belief, they were just looking for a free vacation, as many of you suspected. What about the obnoxious behemoth of a ring? It was intended to be a short-term loan for the length of the event. He was enraged, and he ejected them all from the building, this time in full NC style. He passionately apologized for lying and pleaded with me to forgive him for his ignorance, to which I agreed. The two of us have decided to pursue marital counseling, and although we still have a long way to go, we're absolutely on the same page, particularly when it comes to his parents. We've also opted to treat our trip as a vacation rather than a business trip. All of the visitors are aware of the situation and are looking forward to relaxing on the warm sands of the beach. It was also intriguing to read the last testament of his grandma. My husband ended up obtaining a portion of her inheritance, and the greatest thing is that he gets to keep the house. I was the one who got the garish monster of a ring from her. The object is making me nervous, and my friends are split on whether I should offer to sell it to MIL or retain it, and shock them with the realization that their piece of history is now in the possession of an Asian. My spouse seems unconcerned about the outcome, and I am looking forward to your advice. Thank you very much for all of your assistance.